I'm back with Senator Ted Cruz. We're talking about his new book, Unwoke, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America, a website, tedcruz.org. Ted, you mentioned something at the end of the last segment that I think is very important, that it is not merely publicizing the activities and the sort of horrific actions of the woke. It is also putting effective pressure on them in a way that makes a difference. And I think this is important because a lot of people think that if I don't go to Target anymore, or if I cancel my subscription to Disney Plus, that is going to do it. But of course, these are large and powerful corporations. It's going to take something to get a company like Costco or Coke or Disney to jump. What would you say to people who say, well, Ted, that's a really good example where you were able to shame these corporations? What are some similar techniques that one can do? And particularly with the university, because while I like the idea of taking them back, I also kind of throw up my hands a little bit. I say there are hundreds of institutions. What's the realistic hope that we can actually recover them? So let's talk a little bit about, let's kind of go forward to your solutions and start thinking about what is a pathway, a blueprint for fighting back against the infiltration, given how far it's gone.
So I would say the strategy is threefold. Number one, sunlight and transparency. And it's worth remembering the policies of the radical left are wildly unpopular. No rational, reasonable person supports abolishing the police. No rational, reasonable person supports open borders and the chaos we have at our southern border. No rational, reasonable person supports medically sterilizing and castrating little children. And no rational, reasonable person supports and celebrates Hamas atrocities targeted at civilians. Those are not popular positions. So the left relies on power, on force and coercion, and they rely on indoctrination. And Marxists always start with the kids. It's why there's such an emphasis on university, such an emphasis on K through 12 education, because starting with the kids and indoctrination is critical. By the way, it's why not only are you seeing these protests, you're seeing the role of TikTok as China is pushing pro-Hamas propaganda. And you want to talk about a terrifying statistic. Harvard recently did a poll that among Americans 18 to 24, 51% of them believe Hamas was justified. That's what's happening when we're not countering lies with truth. Now, transparency and sunlight is part of it. Another part of it is dramatically increasing the consequences for giving in to the woke mob. And then another part of it is creating alternatives that become a safe haven for conservative or just rational points of view. Let's go through those one at a time. So one of the interesting things to note, so I have a chapter on big business, and I lay out how, listen, a rational CEO a few years ago, who's utterly apolitical, the rational thing to do is to give in to the mob, because the costs of doing so are quite minor. The benefits were significant. They don't come at you with the pitchforks and torches. It's just easier to give in. And it's interesting. So one portion that I quote in the book, Sam Bankman-Fried, who just was convicted of massive fraud for FTX. He was kind of the poster boy for ESG, for woke business. He and his fellow executives gave over $40 million to Joe Biden and the Democrats. Here's an exchange he had with a reporter while he was awaiting his massive fraud trial. The reporter said, "You were really good about talking about ethics for someone who kind of saw it as a game with winners and losers." Here's Sam Bankman-Fried. "Yeah, I had to be. It's what reputations are made of to some extent. I feel bad for those who got effed by it. By this dumb game we woke Westerners play, where we say all the right shibboleths, and so everyone likes us." He's being very open and saying it's a dumb game we woke Westerners play, where we say all the right shibboleths and everyone likes us. He was responding to incentives. Well, you mentioned Target, and in the book I talk at length about Bud Light and Target, and I actually think those were both very significant watershed events. Bud Light was the number one selling beer in America. Their left-wing corporate executives looked down on their customers. They thought they were a bunch of ignorant rubes. And we've never seen a brand light itself on fire as badly as Bud Light did. It went from the number one selling beer in America to dropping out of the top 10 and losing $30 billion of market value. And by the way, those executives all got fired, so they lost their jobs. Just a couple of months later, Target happened. And Target, likewise, they put their political ideology above their customers. They began pushing the aggressive LGBT agenda on children, setting up these displays, marketing, quote, tuck-friendly bathing suits to little boys 2 and 3 years old so they could tuck their genitals and pretend to be girls. And what happened is a bunch of moms got pissed and said, why are you trying to indoctrinate my children? And again, Target, the exact same thing. They lost tens of billions of dollars. Now, here's what's interesting, Dinesh. If you look at the discussions of the executives at Target as the scandal was breaking, what they said repeatedly was, we don't want to be another Bud Light. We don't want to be another Bud Light. That is a very good thing. We need to incentivize the next corporate CEO thinking about, do I go woke, to say, you know what? I don't want to be Bud Light. I don't want to be Target. Maybe I'll just stay out of politics and just make widgets and increasing the downside. Let me give you one more example of increasing the downside. A couple of years ago, the Texas state legislature passed a bill called Senate Bill 13. I was very active in it. I publicly advocated for it, urged every state legislator to pass it. What it did is it said, if you boycott oil and gas, Texas is going to boycott you. State of Texas, millions of jobs depend on oil and gas. You've got these woke Wall Street firms who are saying we will not invest in anything having to do with oil and gas. And Texas says, fine, if you do that, you don't get a penny of the money from our endowments, from our pension funds. It's hundreds of billions of dollars. It's a massive pool of cash. And I'll tell you, Dinesh, Wall Street freaked out. And by the way, the state of Texas also said, if you undermine the Second Amendment, you're also ineligible for Texas's funds. And that likewise caused Wall Street to freak out. In the book Unwoke, I urge other red states to follow that pattern. And we've got to change the cost-benefit analysis so that the downside of giving into this mob is worse than the upside. And that's a big part of taking these institutions back.
We'll be right back for a final segment with Senator Ted Cruz. Debbie and I made a New Year's resolution. We're going to lose some weight. And look, it's been great. Thankfully, PhD weight loss came to our rescue. Debbie's lost 24 pounds. I've lost 27. We are both keeping them off, and we are now on officially maintenance. The program is based on science and nutrition. No injections, no pills, no long hours in the gym, no severe calorie restriction. Just good, sound, scientifically proven nutrition. It's so simple. They make it easy by providing 80% of your food at no additional cost. They tell you when and what to eat. And guess what? You can do this without ever being hungry. The founder, Dr. Ashley Lucas, has her PhD in chronic disease and sports nutrition. She's also a registered dietitian. She helps people lose weight and, most important, maintain that weight loss for life. If you're ready to take the step of losing weight like Debbie and I have, call PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Here's the number. Write it down. 864-644-1900. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. The number again to call, 864-644-1900.